Warning. This episode contains adult language and adult humor.
Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults?
If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Kate Amrine. Kate is a New York-based performer and educator. Besides being a gifted trumpet player, Kate is on a mission to give voice to those who are too often overlooked. And whether it's in her quest to commission and perform new music or her involvement with Brass Out Loud, Kate is a musical and social force to be reckoned with. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. All right, welcome to this episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, and I am with Ms. Kate Amrine. Kate is a phenomenal individual. I'm just really impressed with the things that she's doing, both as a musician and as a social advocate. So I'm just really, really pleased to have her on the show, and I hope that you guys will be challenged in your thinking by listening to this episode today. So let's just jump into it. Kate, how are things with you?
Hello. Well, things are as they are. I would say they're mostly good. But because of the cold weather in New York, I haven't been playing outside as much. So I feel like I'm really, really longing to play with people, as I'm sure everyone listening is experiencing as well. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to starting another semester with my students and lots of practicing and recording at home.
Yeah. You know, there's everybody. I mean, you're always going to find people that are going to be in all ends of the spectrum. But, you know, there's so many people who have found themselves kind of in a dark place because of the lack of gigs. And then there are other people that I've talked to that have used this time as a period of introspection and a period of renewing their fundamental love for the trumpet, not just trying to keep your chops in shape for the next gig, but actually getting back to that love of practice just because that's what you want to do. So what have you done to keep your sanity as much as any trumpet player is sane? What have you been doing to keep your head straight during this time?
Well, I've been practicing a lot, as I mentioned. I think I'm in that camp of discovering a new love for the instrument and inspiration. As a freelancer, honestly, I was pretty busy. I was really lucky to be so busy in New York that I wasn't practicing as much as I am now. And so when everything slowed down, it was really crazy to have that time. But then also it was kind of scary because I was like, oh, there are all these areas of my playing that I didn't realize were here and I want them to be here. So in that sense, it's been, inspiring and exciting to have the time to get to work on these things. But also, it's humbling because it's hard to face the things that you're bad at every single day. And especially after so many years of thinking I was hot shit or something, and I'm like, oh, wait, actually, here's this hole in my playing that I really, really need to address. So it's been great to have the time to do that. I've also been like everyone else, learning how to record and edit and, audio and video and all of that. So that's been an amazing experiment as well. And not even talking about recording quality or the techniques of stuff, but just literally the aspect of pressing record and then listening to myself every day is crazy how much you learn. And of course, we all tell our students to do it too, but was I one of those people that was doing it every day? No. But now I am, especially now because I'm doing 100 days of practice challenge on Instagram. So every day I am forcing myself to record and post something. So that has been really fun as well.
Oh, that's awesome. I see in the background there a mute collection. You trying to keep up with Josh Rzepka with your Your collection
I
of
can
mutes?
never keep up with Josh. I have a bunch. I just wasn't really sure where else to put them. It just kind of like works so well there, especially because like I teach and record and practice from this chair, and so it's so easy. Like honestly, I'm that person who would forget a mute off stage in a solo show and then like run off in between pieces. And so like now I'm like, nope, they're all here. Like I can grab it in the middle of the piece if I need to. So
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the stuff that you have going on. I'm really, really intrigued to know more about Brass Out Loud. That the concept, first of all, it just really blows my mind, and the people that you've got that you're involved with in this program. So I don't think maybe there are people out here who aren't hip to what's going on. So why don't you enlighten us, if you will?
for sure. Yeah. So Brass Out Loud is a organization dedicated to uplifting and inspiring brass players everywhere. So we recently started our first workshop. It happened January 8th through 10th, and we had 23 faculty members, of which 70% were female, trans, non-binary, and or BIPOC, which is some pretty crazy diversity when you think about it, because most of the brass seminars and workshops that I've been seeing popping up in this time have been like 90%, cis white men. And I'm just like, really? Like there are these amazing voices out there who are students and, our colleagues should be hearing from, who are not being seen, presented at these workshops. So that was our inspiration for starting. So, we're more than just a workshop in the sense that we're going to be doing events throughout the whole year in addition to our January workshop, which was virtual, of course. So we had 50 people, I think over 50 participants join us on Zoom from over 4 countries, which was super, super cool. Definitely made time zones a little crazy, and so which was really fun. And then we had an awesome age range of around 13, I think, to over 60, which was pretty incredible.
Wow. So with the demographics, was there a nice mix, or was it more towards the non-male population that was engaged in this?
It was pretty incredible. I mean, like in our social media and advertising, we were really trying to tell everyone like this is a workshop for you, like even if you are a cis white male, and where our gender representation, as far as we could see from our surveys, which was pretty evenly split, which was really incredible. I've been to some workshops that are designed or like presented by like an all-female group or like all-female faculty, and then it's kind of weird to see like all women as students or registrants in the workshop. And it's amazing to be a participant in something like that, because you're like, oh, here are all these people that look like me, like how cool. But I think now, especially, we need to have, the door open for everyone in these events, because it's especially the people that are not in those groups who need to be here in on those conversations and to be listening and to be colleagues with people that don't look like them, so that we can like further change what the brass community looks like.
Yeah, well, I mean, the brass community is just a microcosm of what's going on socially, and it sucks that we have to have the conversation of the need to be inclusive. It's the stupidest conversation in the world to have, but it's the most necessary one to have, because if you're not even, I hate to use the word majority, because the majority of the people that are in power are certainly, we know who they are, but that's not really the majority. It's just the group that seems to have a stranglehold on things. So I think it's so important that we, as musicians, because music is supposed to be this universal language. It's supposed to be something that transcends all of our boundaries. But when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, especially in education, especially higher education, it's so skewed, and there are restrictions that are systematically in place to prevent people that don't fit that mold into achieving the kind of status that they really deserve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even things like geographical restrictions, because we were all on Zoom together, and because of different time zones and age ranges and genders, we can never fit that many people safely in a room from so many different places and have people connect in that way. And so it was really amazing in that sense too, because even if you can take a lesson online with someone who's a superstar in another country or something, sometimes the actual like equity of getting those two people to know each other and to actually have that person answer your email, and maybe you're someone younger and you like don't even know how to use email and couldn't possibly contact this famous person for lessons. So we're very much like trying to hit those things as well, and like literally bring these superstar players to people who may not have access to them otherwise.
Yeah. And that's a big part of what I try to do with this podcast as well, is that I've been lucky mostly because I'm just obnoxious. I'll just go up and start talking to people. I don't worry about it. But not everybody has got the financial resources to be able to go. Well, in the old days, the old days when we used to be able to get together in person and travel to an event.
Oh yes, the old days.
Yes, when I was a young trumpet player. So no, we not everybody had the opportunity to do that, even when it was a possibility.
Yes.
And
exactly.
then there was always that kind of clickiness, and you had to have kind of a way to get in, and then you get to go to the cool hangs. But I just wanted to be able to do something that gave that opportunity to that young player in the middle of nowhere, where they don't have these kind of options. If you're in New York, you can go down to the local restaurant or bar and probably bump into someone like a Wynton Marsalis or
Pretty incredible, yeah.
Yeah, but if you're in BF you don't have that opportunity. You're not going to run. You're rarely going to run into people. So I think it's so important that if you have the ability to put people together, which seems to be one of your critical skills, to be able to manage things, that it's really a cool thing to do, because you're giving people the opportunity to make connections that they otherwise wouldn't. So.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of work as a contractor as well. Has that skill come in? Is that something that you've always done? Have you always been kind of that connector, that manager?
Yeah, I think I have. I love, it's funny that you called it bringing people together, because that is the thing that I love to do. So when I first moved to New York, I wanted to play on Broadway and I loved playing musicals. But when I was at school, we only did one musical a year. And I was like, well, that's not enough. Like, how am I going to learn how to do this super, super well if I'm only doing it like once or twice a year? And so I met a music director friend, and I would get an orchestra, like a full 20 to 40 person orchestra for our reading session. And he would get the full cast, and everyone would bring food and beer, and we would just read through shows. And we honestly did probably like 10 to 20 different shows like this. And it was so much fun. And we ran through the whole show, no dialogue. We would stop and redo a section if it was like a hot mess or something. But it was a great opportunity to hang and meet with people. And I would ask people that I had really, really been longing to play with. And nobody had to say yes. We were all just there volunteering our time for free. But very, few times did people actually say no. So I got to play with some serious cats at these sessions. And so that was a really fun thing that I did, bringing people together.
Yeah. Well, the world needs more people like that. And so with the stuff that you're doing, between the Brass Out Loud and the new music stuff that you're doing, and it seems like the common theme is that you seem to be passionate about one, connecting people, but two, giving voice to those people whose voices tend to be not listened to or not heard for various reasons. What started that?
Well, I've actually been doing it for years. I just want to preface this by saying, because I feel like so many people now are like, yes, program music by diverse composers. And I'm like, yes, I have been doing this for years. But also, I'm going to continue to tell you to do it now because it's trendy and everyone should be doing it. And so just wanted to point that out because, I'm not hopping on the trend here. It's not cool to now, have music by Black composers on your concert. It's like, this is a thing that I've been thinking about for a while and that so many other people have thought about for a while. And thank you all for just joining us to this conversation because it's important. Glad you're here. So it's definitely something I've been thinking about. With my first album, I commissioned a bunch of female composers and found a bunch of premiered works also by female composers, and decided that was going to be the focus of my first album. And then with my second album, I was focusing on new music for trumpet inspired by politics and social concepts. So I was thinking about specific issues but also specific people, and I made sure that the whole album was people from all different groups. genders, races, all of that good stuff, so that it could be like, if I'm talking about actual issues that everyone in the world is struggling with, like that it looks like people who are all in the world, not like in my corner of like hipster gentrified Brooklyn or whatever. So
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because I have a good friend who is a manager, like an upper level manager in a big, global corporation. And we were having a conversation recently about diversity. And, he's from England, and he's saying, I thought that I was, really good at keeping an open mind about everybody, but I suddenly looked out at all the people that I hired, and they're primarily white males. And he goes, why is that? I know that there are more qualified people. And it dawned on him that the problem wasn't that if he wasn't picking a white male over a female of color or anything. It wasn't that he was always picking the right person for the job. It was the fact that the recruiters were only getting those people. And so it's like, if we want to change, and he talked to the director of HR, and he said, if we want to change the diversity in this company, we have to start looking different places, because if we keep going to the same places, we're going to keep getting the same people. So we need to cast a wider net. So we need to start looking at different places. So I think with music, it's the same thing. We tend to go to those same spots, whether if you're looking for a classical player, you're going to look at Juilliard, you're going to look at Eastman, you're going to look at this, and you're going to look at these places. And there are lots of places out there where there are a lot of talented people that just they don't have the ability to get into those name or prestige programs that have just as much talent, and in some cases maybe even more.
Definitely.
So I think that what you're doing is so good in giving voice to those people that, as I said before, otherwise would be ignored. But there's got to be something. And you said that you've been doing this for a while in terms of the new music, but there has to be something that you could point to and say, this is where my passion for being the champion for the underserved comes from. What is it in your life that just kind of has been the spark for you to take on these type of causes?
I don't know, honestly. I think it's probably just being a female trumpet player in New York, and the fact that there's so few of us. And so I'm so used to being the only woman in the brass section on gigs, and realizing that there is nobody else that looks like me. And then hearing so many comments over the years of like, I didn't know there were women trumpet players, and like stuff like that. I'm just like, oh, really? Like, there's so many people, we're out here. And so I think like having that happen so many times, I'm just like, the world needs to know about these things. And like, this is what I see. At least with programming, I see it more as like a lot of like really big soloists and other people that I would look up to and say like, oh, I want to be like them. Like, I want my career to look like that. And I would look at the albums they were recording and concerts that they were doing, for like chamber series and stuff like that. I'm like, wait, why is it all music by dead by men? Like, nobody needs to hear the Hummel again. Like, I love it. I'm totally working on it right now for a recital, but like, we would be fine if it was never played again. I'm sorry to say that. I'm totally still going to program it, but I'm also going to program other pieces by people who are alive now, and people who are not alive now, who we've very rarely heard in the classical world, and other genres too, for sure. So I think probably with that, and just realizing like this is something that we all should be thinking about, like teachers and students for sure. At least what you were saying before about bringing people together and like what we can all do. I think the big thing is, like trying to hire people that don't look like us, which is a really big thing. And it's so easy to hire, the other people in your studio who all are like living in the same dorm, or like, we're all like, it goes back to like locker room talk and like these groups of like everyone's the same gender and we're all hanging out on the band bus together. So it's like, we're not going to hire that other person who's like literally not in the same room as us. But the more that we can like extend the invitation across the table to those people who are not necessarily in the same dressing room before the concert as us, who maybe weren't invited to like the beer hang because they weren't in that room also, And so the more we can, reach out to those people to be included and to be hired on gigs, so we don't have all of these brass quintets or brass ensemble concerts that are all white men. And I'm just like, really? Like, how is it possible? Definitely in the jazz world, we are seeing it a lot too. It's like a whole big band and you couldn't find a woman to be in it. Like, that's crazy. There are so many women playing jazz. Like, you didn't think to ask anyone. So things like that, we need to hire diverse voices as well.
Yeah. There's so much of it, and it's a kind of yin yang thing. There's like, you want to network, you want to work with people that you're comfortable with, in terms of if I know that if I get a call for a session, I've got a group of people that I've just worked with for so long that it's kind of second nature. We don't have to really talk about much. It's just like, I write a chart and they know exactly how I like to phrase things and articulate things. So it just makes my job easier. However, there does become a level of where you paint yourself in a corner because you don't have new ideas. You don't have fresh takes on things. And I think that's where diversity comes in, that having people with different perspectives, people with different backgrounds, different experiences, they add to the process, and as opposed to detract from. So I really am very, very, I try to be very conscious of the fact that, there has to be a little bit of being willing to step outside of your comfort zone if you want to grow personally. And then obviously as art, if we want music to grow, we have to step outside of our comfort zone of what we're willing to do, what we're willing to listen to, what we're willing to try, if we want to make it grow. So where your comfort zone, where have you stretched your comfort zone over the past few years? You're not old enough to be talking about decades, so
yeah, I will admit, maybe not decades, but honestly, everything since March, since everything shut down, I feel like I've been pushing myself and stretching that, because I used to be one of those people that was really scared of technology, and I was working on a computer that was 10 years old, and it was Windows, and I was using like Windows Live Movie Maker to edit videos, and I could put in an MP3 with my video, and that was the extent of my editing skills. And now I'm doing like all these fancy projects. And so I really had to just like take the time and be like, okay, I'm not stupid. I can figure this out. Like, I'm going to watch some YouTube videos about it. I'm going to ask a million questions. I'm going to Google literally every single step of like, how do I cut and paste and like things like that. Like, I've searched for everything. So in that sense, I think I definitely pushed the comfort zone with that. Even just with practicing, like being willing to sit down and be like, yeah, I'm really not great at that thing. Like, how am I going to better? Okay, like I'm going to practice this and like actually do it. I think I see with my students, sometimes we get scared to practice the things we're like really, really bad at. You're like, oh, it'll be fine because like I'm never going to do it. And you're like, no, it's not fine. Like, you really should practice something. And so, I mean, I went down the mouthpiece safari a little bit. I know we're not going to talk about gear too much. But that's been really great to be like, okay, is my stuff really working? Like, how can I make my equipment as efficient as possible? And having the time now to figure it out has been really great.
All right. Well, actually, that makes a good segue, because I did promise you that we would talk about gear. And yes, audience, we are going to talk about gear. We're trumpet players. Come on, give me a break.
I'm sorry, I had
but
to.
No, it's okay. So I actually have added this new segment, and it's called Gear Up. And so what I would like to do is I'd like to talk about your gear just a little bit. So, but it's always going to take a little left turn at some point. So so basically, what are you playing right now?
So I play on a Bach trumpet, B flat and C, and my pick and my flugel are Yamaha. And because I'm a Dennis Wick artist, I'm using my Dennis Wick mouthpiece for trumpet and cornet. I use since I have it right here, go in there. It's the 3C Ultra. So it kind of looks like a Monet in the sense that it's like thicker, I guess you could say. Which to me, it just feels like, the same like Bach 3C that I've been on for years, except better, because so many things. Definitely don't need to go into all the dirty details of all the things that are better about it. For commercial playing, I use the Bob Reeves 42S and M for like lead playing and jazz stuff, which I love. I think that's it. Oh, and then flugel, I use an AR resonance mouthpiece.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so when you were going through your process of, as you're talking about trying to dial in your mouthpiece, what was it that you were looking for in terms of equipment change?
So I'd been playing on that Bach 3C for probably like over 10 years, and it was fine. And because I like freelancing in all different styles, it was really great to have something that I could use in all different styles. And I had a lead mouthpiece in addition to that. But because I was doing so many different styles, I was like constantly alternating things, but playing it all on the same mouthpiece. Honestly, my mouth got like confused, if that's a thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I felt like my sound changed. And this was probably just like from being too busy and not practicing enough and not, spending time on fundamentals or something. But like my sound concept was so blurred between multiple genres that I didn't feel like I had this strong me, Kate sound, unless I was playing the stuff for my album. And so like with my CD stuff, I'm like, I know exactly how it should sound. I have it in my head. But even just playing like a classical etude, I would be like, oh, this isn't like, I'm not sounding like the way I want to sound. And it was very focused on classical sound because I felt like that 3C was really great for like Broadway and jazz stuff, but like the classical sound just like was not happening on it. And so I got introduced to Dennis Wick, I guess probably like maybe a year ago at this point. And as soon as I played this mouthpiece, I was like, oh, this is the classical sound. And I was never one of those like put in a mouthpiece and it's instantly better kind of people. I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like those people are lying. But it really was true with this. And I was like, oh, like this is the classical sound that I've been trying to find. It's like, I need this. But because I was so busy, I didn't have time to like fully make the switch to it because, when you're freelancing and doing so many things, like that's not the time to put in a new mouthpiece and be like, great, this is me now. And so I switched in March as soon as everything shut down. I'm like, great, this is my new mouthpiece. Like I'm going to learn it and it's going to be fine. And it took probably like a month for everything to feel comfortable. And then it was great. I was like, why did I ever do anything other than this? And so then I have my mouthpiece for classical stuff. I have my jazz mouthpiece and I have my lead mouthpiece. And for me, that's just like what works. And it's so easy to separate the sounds now. And like, I can sort of play like some like bluesy phrases on my main classical mouthpiece, but it's not going to sound like the true jazz sound that I'm going for unless I switch. So it's flexible. But like that classical sound that I always wanted, that I was always like, why do other people sound like that? And I sound like this. Now I have that, which is really cool.
Okay. That's cool. All right. So one of the things, so we're going to stay on this gear subject for a moment. One of the things that people, I think, have problems with is they don't know how to pick gear. So it's what's in the local music store. What's on sale the cheapest on eBay, or what's this famous person playing. So as a performer, as an educator, what advice would you give to people who are looking to change gear in order to let's you work with what you're going through, that you want to create a very specific and identifiable sound? What are the things that you would suggest them doing and the approach that you would suggest them taking to finding the right gear for them?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'd say focus on what feels good, not what sounds good. It sounds really stupid. But unless you're one of those people where like you can play any mouthpiece and like it doesn't feel any different to you, but I'm super sensitive to feel. So I played some mouthpieces, especially when I was looking for a new pick mouthpiece, and like the sound sounds great, but it feels awful. And it feels like you're playing on this like crazy weird thing. And I would never want to do that every day. So like for me, that feel is so much more important than sound. Because you always work on the sound a little bit and sort of obviously, like chip it, stamp, like these things that we work on literally every day for our sound. But you can't change if it feels bad or feels awkward. So for me, like feel translates to rim size. So like whatever is most comfortable for the shape of your lips is a really great starting point. Also like working on what you know. So like if you're like, oh, I like my mouthpiece now, but it's just a little too shallow. And so it's like, okay, like what is slightly bigger than that? And like, is that better? I generally don't recommend people do the whole like true safari of like, okay, I used to play on this kind of mouthpiece. Now I'm going to play on like these 5 different brands. It's like, no. Like don't go too far. Cause then you're like, you'll lose where home is and you won't be able to come back. So I think like small changes are good when experimenting. Cause then you're like, okay, so like too big is not it. Like I need something like this. But just opening the door and like picking literally any mouthpiece on the shelf is like not going to be the thing that's going to help.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Unfortunately, most of us have done that at some point in our career. But, hey, those are the things you learn. So speaking of your performance, and, you were talking about, trying to get your classical sound, your jazz sound, and your lead sound. So you do a variety of gigs. You're called on to do a lot of different things. So with your classical sound, what's your what is the thing that inspires you about that sound? What is the sound that you hear that you're striving to produce?
I think I'm thinking of things like resonance and like beauty through every note and on every phrase. Sometimes when people play and they're like not really paying attention, you'll play a phrase and like the beginning of it's pretty and the end of it's pretty and like overall it's like fine. Like the air was there, the sound was there, but you're not like taking the audience on a journey with you on like every single note. And so when I'm playing phrases and stuff, I'm trying to be like, okay, every note is important and like let me carry you from like here to here in the phrase. So I'm thinking about that kind of stuff, like definitely sound. Um, I guess like I mean classical playing has like such a wide variety of things, but I'm definitely thinking of like style and like the things that I'm going for, like whether it is like principal trumpet sound or like lyrical soloist sound, and so how I can sort of be the master of all of those things, or I guess the things that I'm practicing all the time.
Yeah. So like if you had to say, and because we have our unique sound. Everybody's got a unique sound, and that's probably one of the hardest things for me to grasp is that I've been told for so long that my sound was bad by teachers, as opposed to we can refine your sound. It was like we just want to change your sound. And now the things about my sound that they didn't like are the things that keep me working, which is having a very because I mostly do commercial work, so I need to have that kind of penetrating sound. It just needed to be smoothed out a little bit. But so I think everybody's got this concept of sound in their head and their own natural sound, but then there are always people that you're going to look at as kind of like the role model for what that sound is like. So if you had to say, well, in terms of my classical sound, in terms of my jazz sound, in terms of my lead sound, these are the people that I look to and go, yeah, that's my inspiration.
Yeah. I'd say probably right now I've been listening to a lot of like Teen Thing Helseth. I love her sound. Alison Balsam for sure, especially for like pick playing and like solo rep. Love it. Kevin Cobb for the like the resonance and the beauty on every note, like through phrases. So those are my classical peeps. Jazz wise, I was recently on this like Chet Baker kick, I feel like for like my whole life. And so normally I would say like Miles and Chet Baker have been like my sound concepts in jazz. But I'm trying to expand that to like the whole like Lee Morgan, Roy Hargrove sound, because at least as a mostly classical trained person, like that style of jazz playing is like so foreign to me. And like, how can I make my sound like brassy and bright and loud and just like so easy sounding? It's like those people are not trying, like it doesn't sound like they're trying very hard. It just sounds like that's what comes out. And so I'm trying to get that like ease in my jazz playing more. I don't know, it just sounds like those, they're like going for it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And I've been
Oh yeah.
playing a lot of like funk New Orleans style brass band stuff in quarantine, and so having that sound has been like super helpful for that.
Right.
um Broadway stuff, I'd say Tony Cadlick for sure. Oh my God, he's just so good.
Yeah.
Love his playing. And he's one of those people who just like never like stops amazing me with his playing, because I did like he just has like, bags of tricks all over the place. So I did a recording of my arrangement of the Tomasi fanfare from the brass ensemble piece, the Fanfare Liturgiques, for trumpet octet, and he played on it and was just like awesome. And I was like, I didn't even know you had a seat trumpet, and he sounded just like incredible. I'm like, oh my God, like who knew? Like I knew he would sound good, but like he sounded really, really good. And then he put together a big brass collaboration for all the Broadway people. And I think it was like a Christmas piece. It was around Christmas time, like another like awesome bold, brass fanfare kind of thing. And he played pick on it. I was like, oh my God, your piccolo playing is so good. And so like having someone like that who's just like an awesome commercial player, like great classical player, and like because of he's in the New York pop, so I feel like that's like the thing. So I try not to do a lot of like, before I die I want to play like this gig, but like that's definitely one of the things that I'm just like, yes, that would be super sweet.
Yeah. 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 How about your lead playing?
Oh yeah, lead playing. Definitely Tony for sure. A lot of other people. Let me think. Honestly, I feel like my answer should be like big band lead players. I feel like that's like what people say. And like I love listening to, like Thad Jones and Count Basie and like all of these amazing big bands. But my lead playing like idea is from a Broadway construct because that's what I want to be doing. Like that's
Mhm.
sort of what I need my lead sound to sound like. Um, so people like Raul Agras are just like super killing. Um, Definitely Tony for sure. Um, who else do I love? Glenn Drews on Chicago. Like those people that just like wall of sound. Oh, Don Downs. I watched the book on Spider-Man and Aladdin when he was playing lead on it, and I've like never heard a louder trumpet section in Broadway. I was like, oh no, like also I have to sit next to you guys for 3 hours. Like this is insane. So those kind of things for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's cool. Those are some great names, and so for people who aren't familiar with some of those artists, definitely check them out. I know Tony is definitely one of my all-time favorite players. Just like you said, anything he plays is just it's killing.
So good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You don't know whether you want to just run up and hug him or punch him in the head.
Yeah, exactly. But he's so nice too, and that's why
Yeah.
it's like you can't hate these people. He actually inspired me to do one of my recent arrangements, which was the Marvin Gaye tune "What's Going On."
Mm-hmm.
He played it on one of his like quarantine concerts a couple months ago, and he was just doing everything with tracks that he made in Logic, and I was like, "Whoa! Like this sounds incredible!" And it's just him playing with the tracks. And it sounded so good on flugelhorn. So I was like, oh my God, okay, I have to arrange that for flugel and string quartet. So I'm really pumped about that one, which will be out later this month.
Awesome. I'll have to look for that for sure. For sure. Actually, you get that, let me know, and I'll make sure to put links in update the show notes, and people can get to that. So with the Broadway stuff that you've been doing, in the past, you've done some off Broadway stuff. You've done some on Broadway stuff, yes, as well.
Yeah, I've been subbing on a show for a couple of years, which has been amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love Broadway. I haven't been able to see a show in way too long, and obviously, nobody's seen a show recently. But it was kind of disappointing. Like in the '80s, when I was going up there a lot more, there was definitely a lot more, in terms of the live bands. But then, things started to get more and more pared down. So with the limited number of shows that are running these days, that are running full orchestras, how do you navigate that world in terms of getting into those gigs, and how are people to in general to work with, especially coming from that position of being a female trumpet player in a particularly male dominated world?
Yeah, the Broadway scene is very male dominated. It's crazy. I think like in terms of just a trumpet player or horn player in general, being as versatile as possible is going to be the thing that, at least in my mind, is going to bring success. The off-Broadway shows that I've had are very like chamber music-y, like they're sort of like indie rock musical theater style-wise. But it just feels like I'm playing chamber music. And so the first show that I had was called Alice by Heart, and I had a lot of like piccolo fanfares, like in these like up-tempo numbers and things like that. So it was very like Beatles influence, but also like schmaltzy flugel solos where it's like just me and the singer. And so like, can I be lyrical in that way too? Um, and then we also had like in that same tune like a bunch of like like classic swing, like high note falls and scoops and all that good stuff. So being flexible and able to hang in all of those different genres, I think, is the thing. At least for me, the thing that I like being able to bring to a pit is all of the solo work that I do. And so whether that's like experimental weird sounds, and like being able to improvise in that way, but also just the fact that I feel like I, have something to offer as like my own sound as a soloist, and more like beyond what like a typical like Broadway pit player has, if that makes sense. Like there's so many people who are so great at that and that's all they do, and they're like bomb freelancers in town. But I like knowing that I am also a soloist and that I have things to say as a soloist, like just me on the instrument. And so I try and bring those into the pit as well.
Yeah, that's very cool. So yeah, I've been really interested in knowing. I want to go actually back to the Brass Out Loud. this is a collaborative effort, obviously. With that, who are some of the other people that are involved with that project in terms of steering the direction?
Yeah, super good question. Definitely should have mentioned them before. So my friend Rebecca Caru, she was the founder of Brass Out Loud, and she brought Melissa Munoz and I on to the project. And so she's a French horn player here in New York City. Although, and I guess we have met several times in person, but it was like we were both attending the same concert, so we haven't like actually spoken in person, which is totally crazy. And then Melissa Munoz, who's a trumpet player based in Texas right now, and I have met her in person. I was playing with the Ronnie Marsalis Philadelphia Big Brass Band, I guess about a year ago in January, and she was at our concert, and she was a friend of some of the other people in the group, and so we all had that like after concert hang together, and I was like, oh, you're really cool. Like we should maintain a friendship over the internet and all of that good stuff. And so I haven't really had a lot of like positive experiences with other female brass players. Sometimes I think people can be kind of bitchy and judgy and not necessarily good colleagues. I'm really lucky that in my own brass quintet, like everyone is super awesome to work with. But to be running a business with other women brass players is like a whole different thing. And so there's so many things that we're thinking about, whether it's like literally just posting on social media or fundraising, or like how are we accepting money from all of these participants. And so having people that are just like nice, normal, respectful people and professional makes everything so much easier. And we're actually giving a masterclass tomorrow, so I already have seen them today, and so
Okay.
feels very nice to be like, I just saw them and now let me brag about how awesome they are.
Yeah, that's good. So, like, what do you see the end game for this venture being? I mean, what do you hope to accomplish, and what's going to be the thing that you would do, and you'd be able to point it and go, yeah, we nailed it on this one.
With Brass Out Loud?
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, we already reached that because we had such an amazing first workshop, but we're definitely, obviously, continuing the fun all year. So having even larger turnouts at all workshops, at all of our bold chats where we interview specific faculty members. We're having a bunch of panels throughout the year, as we did last year, but on specific topics. And our first one, I'm not exactly sure if I'm supposed to talk about it, but it's called Visionaries, and it features some of the super, super, super brass stars who shall not be named at this time. But we're really lucky that we like shot our shot and like aimed for the stars with the cats of all cats with that one, and it's going to be really cool. But yeah, I think like, I mean, people say that like, oh, it's like the whole like when there are nine thing of like, we shouldn't need to be talking about these things, and like when everyone is diverse, and we won't need to have these conversations anymore. And I feel like that's like, I mean, yeah, that day would be super awesome, but also we kind of won't really know like when that day has arrived, like when is everyone going to be a good ally? When are we all going to hire diverse voices like all the time? So I definitely see it as something that's going to continue on and on. We're talking about so many things, like, diversity is just sort of like, I guess, the beginning of the conversation, because like at our actual workshop, we're doing all the same things that any other brass festival would do, like warm-ups and performance master classes. But we're sort of focusing on how can we make things relevant to what musicians really need today. And so we're talking about like the musicians of today in terms of diversity. But we're also talking about the musicians of today in terms of like real world skills that musicians actually need to know, because people are not teaching these in school. And so we had classes on mindset and music entrepreneurship and yoga and working with composers, audition prep, like all of these things that nobody really talks about and people often have to like seek out other resources for. And so having an all-in-one conference and one organization that we're talking about all these things all year makes it super impactful.
Yeah, and that's been a running theme that has come up with people that I've talked to on the same concept. And I'm a big believer that the educational system as a whole needs to be revamped. There are so many things about the way that all the way from public school to higher education. Mm-hmm. And I think especially for musicians, in this kind of this very specialty niche, that we're still beholden to so many old traditions that really aren't serving us. And if we spend as much time doing things like entrepreneurship, on marketing, on the like you said, dealing with composers, dealing with directors, how to successfully navigate auditions. And we spend as much time on that as we did on Gregorian chants.
Yes.
We would have a new generation of people who are ready to do their job to the best of their ability. But I think I have to really applaud anyone who is taking a step to create this environment where people are learning the real world skills of being a musician, because it's easier, I think, because you're in that world where you're teaching and you're gigging, and so you're able to see that. And I think sometimes people, especially in academia, they get so separated from that working world that they lose sight of the stuff that's really yes, you got to be able to play your horn, but there's other stuff that is just as important in terms of having a successful career. And if you're setting up someone for success, you got to do that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And as a young person, I mean, it's in some ways a privilege that I am able to say these things to my students, because like I know what it's actually like to email 30 places and be like, hey, can my quintet play at your coffee shop, and all of these things that older, more seasoned professors are like haven't had experience with in a while. And so it's nice to be able to be like, yes, students, like go do this thing, it's important. So
yeah, well, and I think that's it's an important thing to think about in terms of the continuum of skill and development. And the best, if you want to take the cat of all cats, they have certain lessons that they can share. Obviously, I mean, they've got the years of experience, they've got the accolades and things like that. But sometimes it's really hard for a younger or newer student to gather those lessons because there's so much separation between them. So sometimes you just need somebody that's one step ahead of you or two steps ahead of you, because what they're doing you can see as being difficult, but you can see as being achievable. If you look at some, look at the superstars, and it's like, oh, well, that's because they're, that's Doc, or that's, that's this person, that's that person. So you can't really relate to the things that they've had to go through. So yeah, I think that this new generation of players, I mean, every generation has the responsibility of pulling up the next generation and setting them up for better success. But
definitely,
yeah, like you said, sometimes people are a little too bitchy, and they don't want anybody biting their gigs. So
yeah, there's a lot of that whole like covering their pot action, which I don't love. So. Yeah. I was giving a master class at a different school, and Lexi Signer, I think you know her. Do you know her?
Yeah.
Dr. Lexi. And she just had like the best line of like, if my students end up taking my gig, of like, if they end up being more successful than me, then like my job is done. And I originally heard that. I was like, wait, really? Like, actually, like I kind of want my gig. But it's like, no, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to raise people that are going to do things that we didn't even realize were possible, people that are going to be even better than us. Because I'm sure that some of my teachers have been like, wow, like, Kate is doing a lot of things that I never thought were possible, like in my own career. Like, I didn't know how to edit audio when I was her age or something. And I also think about, especially in terms of diversity, sometimes not even just in the women brass world, but anyone out there who's thinking like, oh, like, why should someone else of this other, whatever category get the job when I also want the job? And in my mind, it's like having more female trumpet players on Broadway helps me. Like, yes, I would like to be that person in that chair on that gig. But also, if it's somebody else, that means that the world is seeing that someone else too. And they're saying like, oh, women are on Broadway. Like, that's so cool. That's a thing. And so more people are be like, ah, yes, women can be on Broadway because of whoever that is. So I would like it to be me. But also, if it is someone else, like, that's fucking great. So that is an attitude that I think we all should be thinking about more.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like when my previous life before this, I was a professional martial arts instructor, and after years of doing that, I kept telling my students, I want you to be better than me, or at least we're better than I am, after so many years of practice. But I'm not going to let you get better than me in that I'm going to work my ass off,
Oh,
so.
definitely.
Yes. So the better you get, the harder I have to work to keep my skills sharp. And if you do pass me, then great. That like Lexi said, I've done my job. I've set you up for the best success possible. And I think, whether you're a teacher or just a human being, that's what we should be trying to do. We should be trying to set up the next generation to be so much better off than we are and learn from our mistakes. And, but hey, here we go again. Things that are so simple, but I don't think we're ever going to really get around those because of
I can't change
nature.
everyone. I can only change the only things that I control. So
Yep, change yourself and be the example. So that's really important. All right, well, we're going to do my favorite part of the show. This is a series of rapid fire questions. This is actually called the Robinson's Remedy Rapid Fire Round.
Yes.
So brought to us by our good friends Kenny and Richard at Robinson's Remedies, of which Kate is an endorsing artist. So,
yes, I was going to show you my whole pack of all of the things that they recently sent me, but I think it's too deep in there to find.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm so happy to be an endorsing artist because that stuff is amazing.
Yes, it's chops in a bottle. So what we're going to do is I'm going to throw out a bunch of different questions to you. They're going to be all over the place. Some will be about music, some will not. Just give me your best answer to each of these. And here we go is Kate. Who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
Oh, can it be myself? I don't know. That's so hard.
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah, me, I guess. I think we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So making sure that the 5 of me and other people around me are great. That's who it's going to be.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
This is a hard one. I don't think I have a favorite book. I read a lot, but no, I don't have one right now.
Schlossberg?
I know. I was like, Arbin was kind of my first thought, but like not really. I don't know.
All right. What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
I feel like this might be a hot take, but Fargo. I'm just like not that kind of person that watches those kind of movies. I was just like, what is happening right now?
Okay. If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to do?
I think I'd probably work in food in some way. I think it would be super awesome to have my own little cafe. Maybe we can have music at this cafe also, but I love cooking and eating, definitely. So that would probably be it.
What's your favorite kind of food?
Dessert? Does that
Dessert
count?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right. Pastries or other kind of desserts?
Well, I'd say donuts first. But yesterday I went out with a friend and got like a cookie flight. So like we went to 3 different cookie places and got a cookie from each. And that was pretty awesome.
Oh, man, that sounds too good. Yeah, I'm jonesing for donuts right now anyway. That's a bad thing. What's your favorite drink?
Coffee, if we're keeping it daytime professional. But otherwise, I'd say beer.
Okay. Okay, we're going to go deeper into this one. Give me a specific kind of beer.
Okay, I like New England IPAs. I like Pilsners. I like lagers. Not really like a super dark beer kind of person, so that's never going to be the fave. But yeah, I like going to breweries. I mean, that's sort of a thing still in New York that's possible. But yeah, just being able to try different kinds, it's kind of awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I've got, I don't know what happened, but I suddenly found that I cannot drink beer anymore. And I was a serious beer drinker.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. So a couple of friends of mine, I don't know if you know Chris Cromer, has a minor tune-up down in Delaware, repair shop, and Rob Kwolek from used to be in Richmond, but now he's down in Nashville. We constantly are messaging each other about beer selections. So it was a lot of New England IPAs and that sort of stuff. So unfortunately, no more for me. All right, Kate. So here's our next question. You could have a dinner party. Invite any 3 living people. Who would they be?
Okay, so Wynton Marsalis, that would be a first one. I think Jonathan Baptiste. I honestly don't know him very well, but he seems like a really interesting person to talk about, and I would love to hear them talk about music together. And Kamala Harris. Going for it. Why not?
Ooh, yeah. There you go. All right. I like that one. Same dinner party. You've got 3 additional chairs, but the caveat is that the 3 people that you can invite have to be from history. So any 3 people that are no longer with us, who would those people be?
This, I don't know why this is harder for some reason. Maurice Andre be pretty cool. RBG, get some power women in there.
Yeah.
One more. Miles Davis.
That'd be a very interesting, hang. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. All right, lacquer plated or raw?
Lacquer.
Okay. What is your favorite quote?
I have one on my wall right now that says, oh, wait, I could bring you with me. This is amazing. So I can read it in perfect attention. Where attention goes, energy flows.
Gotcha. I know that one well. I use it all the time.
Yes, love it.
All right. What is your greatest fear?
I think it's just being shitty. I don't want to be bad at what I do. I want to make sure that I'm good. And whatever that is, like whatever category that is, I want to be good at it.
Okay, cool. You can be granted one superpower. What would it be?
I guess like perfect hearing. Is that a thing? Does that count? I don't know.
Yeah,
superhero ears to hear every bad thing in sounds.
Oh boy.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. don't listen to me. What aspect of trumpet playing do you feel is the most overrated?
I think like getting everyone to sound the same. I feel like there's like this idea. It's funny because it's so like counter to what I was talking about before, but there's like this idea of like classical trumpet sound, and like sort of realizing now, especially with multiple career options and, you know, avenues for people to explore, that like classical sound of trumpet world doesn't have to mean the same thing for everyone. And letting people know that like you can have orchestral players who will sound slightly different. Like we don't all need to sound exactly the same way. I think that might be a good one.
Okay, cool. What aspect do you think is the most underrated?
Developing your own voice. So I guess that's kind of like what I said before. But yeah, having your own things that you like to play, your own way of doing things. That was never something that was talked about to me in school. You know, the idea that we can be our own, you know, have something to say that nobody else can say. That's a really important thing.
Yeah. Okay. You can go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
This is tricky. Listen more to your teachers. Honestly, that would be it. That sounds so stupid. I was such a rebellious student. I probably still am. I'm always like, oh, like I hear you, but I'm going to go do my own thing. And it's like, no, just listen to them. Like they know what they're doing. So that's what I'd say.
Okay. What piece of advice would you give yourself about life?
To not take everything so seriously. That like, yes, all of this is so important. All of this matters, but also like go have fun, like go do something.
Okay. And finally, what do you want your legacy to be?
That I truly made an impact on the brass community and the trumpet world in my playing and my work.
All right. Well, that sounds like a worthwhile cause. So I want to thank you for spending time with me today. And I will have there are links in the show notes on how you can find out more about Brass Out Loud and the other things that Kate has going on. And in parting, what's one thing that you would hope that people took away from our time together today?
I hope people can feel inspired to find their own project, whether it's, specific music that you want to work on or developing your own sound on the instrument, and just to go out into the world and present your authentic self to people, and then realize that we all can always do more to make it a better, diverse community.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your inspiration, Kate. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do both on the horn as well as in the promotion of brass instruments and music in general. So thanks so much for your hard work and your dedication. It's a tremendous job you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. And for those of you joining us, thank you so much for hanging with us today. And remember, as always, peace and slight grease. We out.
Hey, thank you so much for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating connection through our mutual love for the trumpet life. I hope that you learned a few things about today's guest and had some laughs along the way. Don't forget to give us a review. We love those 5-star ratings. And please share this podcast with your friends. We want to see our hang grow for show. Have a suggestion for a future topic or a guest? Hit me up at thetrumpetgurus@gmail.com. Our opening theme was written and performed by Lexi Signor, and all other music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. So in the words of W.C. Handy, life is like a trumpet. If you don't put anything into it, you don't get anything out. So go out there and let your trumpet sound. And I'll see you at the next hang.